Today I'm going to tell you about a super interesting character from the Bible, Naaman. You may not have heard much about her, but her story is full of incredible details. Naaman was an Ammonite princess, the daughter of a king named Naaman, who ruled the Ammonites. But do you know what makes her story even more special? She married none other than King Solomon. Yes, that same one, famous for his wisdom and riches. Her name appears in the Bible, there in 1 Kings 14, verses 21 and 31. Although Naaman's life is shrouded in mystery, there is much information in both the Bible and Jewish tradition that helps us better understand who he was. And that's what I'm going to tell you here. So, before we continue, take advantage and subscribe to the channel and leave a like to help spread this knowledge. Now, just imagine, Naaman grew up in a palace, surrounded by luxury and privileges, like any princess. But her marriage to Solomon was not just a union between two people, it was also an alliance between Israel and the Ammonites. Want to know more about this fascinating story? So stay with me, because there are a lot of interesting things coming. Just imagine, Solomon, one of the most powerful and famous kings of Israel, marries Naaman, an Ammonite princess. It seems like something out of a fairy tale, right? But in fact, this union was a very serious matter at the time. The Ammonites and the Israelites had a long history of conflict. They were descendants of Lot, Abraham's nephew, and, for many years, the two peoples fought each other. So, when Solomon married Naaman, many people in Israel didn't like the idea at all. Many were afraid that it would mix Israel's culture too much with foreign customs. But look how curious, this wasn't Solomon's first foreign marriage. Before Naaman, he had already married the daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh, and he didn't stop there. Solomon was enchanted by several women from different nations and cultures, and the problem was not just the quantity, but the fact that he began to let himself be influenced by these customs, something that his mother had already warned could be dangerous now. Hold this, the Bible says, back in 1 Kings 11 verse 3, that Solomon had 700 wives of royal lineage and 300 concubines. That's right, 1,000 women. Can you imagine the size of this palace and the many stories that happened there? The issue here was not just the impressive number of wives, but the fact that this Solomon was a very wise and powerful king, but had a weak point. He simply could not resist getting involved with women from different peoples and cultures. He fell in love with many of them, including Moabite, Hittite and Ammonite women, who followed different religions and worshipped other gods, but there is one in particular that really touched his heart, Naaman. Solomon didn't just like her, he was deeply in love. This love was so strong that he began to make decisions that would change not only his own life, but also the destiny of Israel. Because he was so involved with Naaman, he allowed foreign customs to enter the kingdom, including the worship of other gods. This was a big problem, because Israel followed the one God, and these outside influences began to weaken Solomon's own faith. In the beginning, he was a king dedicated to God, but little by little he moved away and made decisions that put Israel at risk. His story is a clear example of how even the wisest people can go astray when they let their emotions speak louder than their principles. This shows that choices have consequences, and that not always following your heart without thinking about the impact of your decisions is the best option. External influence ended up moving Solomon away from the path he should follow. This part of the story is full of twists and turns and learning, and if you want to know more, stay here because there are a lot of interesting things for us to explore. From the beginning of his reign, Solomon was a king who worshipped God and followed his teachings. But over time, something started to change. Influenced by his foreign wives, including Naaman, he began to allow and even build altars to their gods. This was a big problem, because Israel had a clear commandment: kings were not to be carried away by these influences. In fact, this story of many marriages did not begin with Solomon. His own father, King David, also had several wives. But, long before, God had already warned that the kings of Israel should not have many wives, because this could lead them away from the true faith. This warning was recorded in Deuteronomy 17 verse 17, but, even though he was the wisest man of his time, Solomon did not follow this advice. It's even impressive to think about it, right? A king famous for his intelligence and wisdom, making decisions that went against what he himself should have known. In fact, one of the most incredible stories in the Bible shows how Solomon used this wisdom to solve problems. But that's another story. Want to know more? So stay here, there's a lot of interesting things to tell you. This story is one of the most famous in the Bible and clearly shows Solomon's wisdom. Two women came to him, each saying she was the mother of the same baby. As no one knew who was telling the truth, Solomon had a surprising idea. He suggested cutting the baby in half and giving half to each woman. It seems cruel, right? But he knew exactly what he was doing. At the time, one of the women became desperate and begged the king not to do this, saying that she would rather give the baby to the other woman than see him hurt. It was at that moment that Solomon realized who the real mother was. After all, only a real mother would give up her own son to protect him. But Solomon's wisdom didn't stop there. He was also a great student of nature. He wrote proverbs full of teachings and even songs that were recorded in the Bible. His knowledge went far beyond politics and justice. But, over time, his reign began to face problems. A man named Jeroboam received a prophecy saying that in the future he would become king over 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. This meant that Solomon's great kingdom was about to be divided. When he heard about this prophecy, Solomon was worried. He saw Jeroboam as a threat to his throne and, overcome by fear of losing power, tried to have him killed. It seems incredible that such a wise king made such a decision, right? But this shows that even the most intelligent people, when overcome by fear and insecurity, can end up making wrong choices. This turn of events was the beginning of the end for the United Kingdom of Israel, and a lot happened after that. Want to know more? So stay with me, because this story still has surprising chapters. After Solomon's death, everything began to fall apart. His son, Rehoboam, took the throne, but it wasn't long before problems arose. Jeroboam, who had already been warned by a prophecy that he would rule part of Israel, returned to the scene and ended up becoming a key player in the conflicts that were to come. This is how Israel was divided into two. The kingdom of Israel, to the north, led by Jeroboam, with 10 tribes. The kingdom of Judah, to the south, ruled by Rehoboam, with only 2 tribes. This separation, called schism, was a turbulent and tense moment, affecting not only politics, but also the religion of the people. This weakened his authority, messed up the economy and caused the revolt to grow more and more. Meanwhile, Jeroboam, now king of the north, had a dangerous idea to prevent his people from continuing to go to Jerusalem to worship God. He wanted to maintain full control over the religion, so he had 2 statues of golden calves made and placed one in Bethel and the other in Dan. He told the people that, instead of going to Jerusalem, they could worship right there. That was a big mistake. The golden calf became a symbol of idolatry and further distanced Israel from God's teachings. This choice brought many negative consequences and marked the beginning of a phase full of challenges for both kingdoms. And this story is still far from over. Want to know how this affected Israel in the following years? So stay here, there's a lot of interesting things to tell you. The story of Jeroboam and the mysterious prophecy. One day, while Jeroboam was making offerings at one of his pagan altars, something surprising happened. An unknown prophet appeared and announced a powerful prophecy. A descendant of King David would one day destroy those altars and even burn human bones on them. And you know what's most impressive? This prophecy was fulfilled centuries later. King Josiah of Judah did exactly what the prophet said. He tore down the altars and eliminated idolatry from the kingdom. But what does all this have to do with Naaman and Solomon? The story of Naaman teaches us a very important lesson. Even the wisest and most powerful leaders can be influenced and led down the wrong path. Solomon, who began his reign with wisdom and devotion to God, ended up being carried away by political alliances and marriages with women from other cultures, including Naaman. Because of this influence, he allowed the worship of foreign gods and built pagan altars, opening the door to a period of spiritual decline and political strife that would lead to the division of Israel. This story makes us wonder, what are the influences that shape our lives? Are we firm in our principles or do we allow ourselves to be carried away by external temptations and pressures? If you like this content, leave your comment, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. God blesses.